Welcome to It's Your Story to Tell podcast. I'm Megan Babcock, your host, and I am so happy to have Brandi with me today for our episode 4. Welcome, Brandi.
Thanks for having me, Meg.
Of course. So you guys, this is so special. Brandi and I were childhood friends, and even though we have not seen each other in way too many years, it's so fun that we get to stay connected on Facebook and see what we have going on in each other's lives. And you guys, I just knew that when I started this podcast, Brandi had to be a guest. So I am so thankful that she was willing to come on and share her story of transformation and the journey that she's been on and the gift that she is to the world, especially when it comes to trauma. So I'm really looking forward to this. I have a little funny story. Brandi and I.
Oh no, I'm very nervous right now.
Yeah, you
did I approve this story? You guys, I'm very scared right now.
This part is my story to tell. Then we'll get to your story to tell. But so we spent a lot of time together. Our families were close. There was a group of us that were homeschooled. You'll get to hear next episode is Lindsay, and she was part of that friend group as well. But what I remember is dance parties and a lot of DC talk and us doing our like music. I don't even think it was music videos because I don't think we had anything to record on, but we sure knew how to have fun and throw a party. And, you know, I think it's so good to even talk about how, you know, we dancing and moving your body is so uplifting and healthy, and especially when you're going through hard things. So we were, doing that from a young age, which was super fun.
Yeah, we were way ahead of our time. Yeah.
We didn't even know what we were doing.
Yeah, good thing there's nothing in the research that says you have to be a good dancer for it to be good for you.
But it was so fun growing up with you. We went to the same church. Our parents were friends. And so we knew each other really well. And so it's really awesome to reconnect, especially around something I think that we're both so passionate about. And that is people finding healing and being able to go on and live the life they were designed to live. And so I just would love if you would share with our listeners a little bit about, you know, your story and how kind of from wherever you want to start, but up to where you started to realize like, hey, this is not where I want to be in life and I'm going to do something different. So take it away. Tell us a little bit about it.
Man, okay. That is so open-ended. How right? Where do one even begin? We did have some good times. It was such fun growing up, and as much crap as social media gets all the time, I sure am thankful for how it keeps me connected with people across the globe. And people that you might not stay connected with years later, you get to be reconnected with. And no matter how much we may have changed over the years, it's so fun to change and then see that other people have changed too. Yeah. And we've a lot of times changed in the same ways, and that we have healed and that we've grown together, and that we get to share those same passions. And how fun that is to get to share that same passion and to connect in ways like this. So I am just so thankful for Facebook.
Yeah, right. I mean, for sure, because with all of the miles and different areas we've all lived, it would be really difficult to if you didn't have that. So I agree. I'm thankful for the awareness that it brings to that we can share things with people in a way that people didn't have access to, podcasts and social media posts and all of these things, you know, to bring people together and help them to not feel like they're alone, because that is when we're alone and we're stuck in places in our life, it doesn't get better. And so by bringing that to light, and hopefully our message will help others to feel they can do this work too, and that they'll be encouraged to find people around them that can support their journey, because we can't do this work alone.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? That is so the truth. And, you know, as we start talking about how we grew up, I think, you know, a couple of the ways that I was growing up are still true today, and a couple of them are not. And I grew up in the church. And so I grew up a little girl who had kind of given my life to God and wanted to follow and obey God and maybe even others, right? I think I had a desire for approval everywhere I turned. And I also, going to a church that was really big on missions, had a passion for Africa that was born when I was really little. I think we were all in the same Sunday school, because I think we went to a small enough church that there weren't like a bunch of Sunday school classes.
Right.
But we had a Sunday school teacher who had been a missionary to Africa when we were really little, like in first grade. And she would come and tell us stories. And that birthed in me a desire to see the world when I was really little. And so I loved to read growing up, and my parents would tell me I had to, in between every like Nancy Drew book, I would have to read a missionary novel. And so that birthed in me just a passion for other cultures and dreams to see the world. And now I have a tattoo actually on my left wrist that is a map of the world. And you've seen those memes that say, I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list.
Yes.
And that is completely me. I've been to 23 countries, and I really, you know, will not be happy until that number's in 50, 60, 70. But want to see every place that I can. And I am happy falling in love with new cultures and new places. But I grew up in the church and was kind of a good little Christian girl. I kissed dating goodbye as a teenager, and married when I was 19. And got married and had 2 kids, and then adopted one from Liberia, and got into a relationship that wasn't super healthy for me. And after 10 years, I realized a need to leave that marriage, because it was not a healthy place for me. And so at 29, I found myself a single mom with a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
That's a lot.
No, I'm sorry. They were 4, 5, and 6 at the time. 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And I was a single mom. And after having served God all of my life, and kind of really being one of those, and you can attest to this, having known me all my life, almost kind of being one of those, like I was kind of described as the little girl on Full House, like that pin a rose on your nose, like,
Yeah.
almost like too good for your britches kind of a girl, right?
You
Like,
were a very good girl.
like
I think
almost like,
most of us, like, you know, even though I had my struggles and things, especially in the younger years, we were really good at being obedient and
yeah,
following directions and being respectful. And, you know, those are all positive things, but there's also some danger in those
right,
areas when you are the motivation, you know, behind why you're doing things is so important, because something that is good can become bad if it's not within a healthy environment or boundaries.
yeah,
Yeah. So I totally understand that.
yeah. I would say I was good at almost disgustingly so. Is that bad? Like it was just not, yeah, it wasn't in a good in a healthy way, is
Yeah.
what I would say. And that obedient to the point where I lost me.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so at 29, I left my husband to find me. And my world came crashing down.
Mm.
And my therapist at the time actually would say that I had more abandonment in that moment than she had ever seen in her life. And because people walked away from me, because really it was so out of character for me, right? Because I had just done what was expected of me
Mm. Yeah.
for so long that this act of what looked like rebellion shocked everyone, and yet it was to save my life.
Gosh, that's hard. Wow. You know, that I'm sorry that that was your experience, to have abandonment in the midst of already something that is so hard. When you come to this realization that where you find yourself is not healthy, it's not where you know that you need to be, and then you take action on it, which is really hard in and of itself, is to move out of this place that has been so comfortable that you know what to expect, people know what to expect from you, and then to be abandoned and even seen as rebellious had to be really hard.
Oh, it was earth shattering for me. And honestly, even here as I describe it, I can imagine what it looked like on the outside, right?
Sure.
I can imagine people being like, whoa, Brandi, this is not you.
Right.
This is a complete departure of everything we've known of
Mhm.
you. And yet I knew in my soul that this is what I needed to do.
Mhm.
And so I had to follow. I had to follow what I knew God was calling me to. And so the way I describe it now is that I was coming out of the box that I had been in for so long.
Mm.
And what followed was God coming out of his box that I had kept him in for so long. And
Oh, that's
both
good.
of us finding ourselves.
Yeah.
And so my PTSD came roaring out.
Mm.
And so I couldn't really handle over that next year watching TV or reading books. And so what I did is I began to read my Bible. And I read my Bible 3 times through over the next year.
Wow. That's a lot of
And
reading.
yeah, well, I didn't have any friends.
Oh,
I lost all of my friends.
no.
And I had just recently moved to Colorado 8 months before. So I really didn't have anything to do. So I had, babies, 4, 5, and 6. So I had my kids and nothing else to do. So if I wasn't going to read and I wasn't going to watch TV, like what else did I have to do but like read my Bible, and go to therapy. I went to therapy like it was my job. Like I had to multiple therapists at this point. So I basically went to therapy and read my Bible and cried and threw up. I had such bad PTSD that I was throwing up everything I ate.
Mm.
And I did healing work. And I began to find me.
So good.
And
so hard to do, but wow, Brandi, confronting all those hard things and not having that support. I'm just so thankful that you found a way to process and work through, because that is not an easy thing to do, especially like I was saying, feeling so alone and being a single mom and all that brings, that you were so dedicated to finding your way out of this, no matter how hard it was and how much work it took. You were committed to finding, what is it that I need to change and learn and grow so that I can have that fulfilled life that is promised to me.
Yeah, I remember somebody saying in the beginning that I remember clinging to knowing that there would be people who came after me, that I would want to be able to lead. And I actually told somebody that. And I remember them saying no, you need to do this for you. But at the time, that didn't mean anything to me, right? I didn't have that value in myself yet, obviously, right? I wouldn't be in this place if I had valued myself that much. And so I couldn't place that much value in me yet. And so I had to value someone else. It had to be worth it, either for my kids or for someone else. And I had to be able to look at others and know, I can do this for them. And eventually I'll be able to do it for me. But for now, I can do it for them.
That's so good. And I want us to really take that in for a minute, because I experienced the same thing. I wasn't doing things for me, and that's how I ended up in the situations I was in.
Right.
And then you come to this breaking point and you're like, now what? Because you still, it's not like you come to a breaking point. You realize like your life's not where you want it to be. Oh, I know what to do. Love myself, self-compassion, stop criticizing. No, it's like, and because you don't value yourself. And then in your situation, you have people who are devaluing you by kind of turning their back, questioning who you are as a person, all of those things that you've already been doing probably to yourself, because I know for me, I was like my worst critic. And so finding your why and your purpose, and that's the thing, like your purpose can change, right? As you grow and your life becomes different. But in that moment, we have to find a purpose, because that becomes that motivating factor. And what was it for you? What became your purpose in that transition?
So originally it was knowing that there were other girls and women that lived in chains, like that lived in bondage of some sort, that had a hard time walking away. And I would walk away and I would choose healing when it was hard, so that they could know that they could choose healing when it was hard. And in some ways, I'm really grateful that I didn't have a lot of support, because then I could look at somebody and say, you can choose healing when you don't have a lot of support, because I know what that's like, because I had to do that too. And so when I didn't have support, I would think to myself, okay, this is you choosing to do this so that you can kind of forge a path and know that it's possible for others, because not every woman is going to have a wildly supportive system.
So true.
And so do this so that you can tell someone else that it's possible.
Oh, that is so good. When I'm working with clients and we're talking about finding the purpose in your pain, that is such a good example of you're in it. It's super painful, but you're really like, you're choosing the pain. You're choosing to go through it because of the purpose.
Right. And I knew, like, I will do anything for someone else. And maybe that's like the Enneagram 2 in me, right? Like, I will suffer if I can choose to suffer for someone else. And so I think just knowing that in my own head, I was like, if I can do this and I know it will translate into helping someone else. And so by doing that in my own head, and for someone else, they might need to translate it into something else, like know your own motivation, know what motivates you. And there's that book, The Four Motivations, that might be really helpful for somebody else to read, to know what motivates them. But for me, that was really helpful to know, like, okay, if I do this, I will be able to translate that into actual help for someone else. And so every time I wasn't supported through that entire system, and then I just gave myself permission, right? Like, I gave myself permission to cry in public, and I was like, screw it. Yes, I cry in line at the drive-through, whatever. If the people at McDonald's see me cry, it's not the end of the world. I
And
actually
you're
don't
giving
care.
them permission to acknowledge
Yeah.
their feelings. You know, that's
Yep.
that's one of the reasons this podcast is so important to me, is that I never learned that having your feelings and emotions and expressing them was how to do it or even
Yeah.
wanted, you know? And so I talked about in podcast one how I learned that my feelings made others uncomfortable and hurt them. And so I need to bury those. And then I couldn't handle my kids' feelings and emotions. And I taught them how to dismiss theirs. And so for me, when I came to my breaking point and had to leave my marriage and choose us, you know, I did it because my kids deserved it.
Yeah.
It wasn't because
Yep.
I deserved it. And
Yep.
then that has evolved as your purpose can. You know, some people think, oh, I got to just have this like one purpose. And it's like, God has so many things for us to do along the way. And now my purpose, yes, it's still my kids, but it's a different level. And I'm doing the podcast because it's all about being there for others, just like you were describing, and saying like, it is possible. 37 years, I didn't acknowledge it. I continued in this process of sabotaging myself. And I also passed it down and hurt my kids, who now have to work through their trauma. But I chose something different 7 years ago, and I was lucky to have somebody like a Brandi. My Brandi was Julia, who came along and said, look, it's possible. I've done it. Here is that path that you were talking about. And, you know, if we can find that purpose in the pain of, I can go and use this, and in some ways, I've been able to now have gratitude for those really hard things, because I know that I have a testimony of, you know, overcoming abuse, sexual, physical, and emotional, that God can now use, that other people, they don't understand what it's like to be in those mindsets and be trapped there. And I do. And that means I get to speak into them in a way that no one else can. You have your testimony. Other people who have lost children or can't be pregnant, like that becomes our story to help others with when we're able to go through it. So I love that you are able to look at it as a positive now. I'm sure in the midst of it, it was just, like you said, gut-wrenching, literally.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there were times I thought I was too broken to ever be put back together again, right? When it is happening and when you are falling apart, you think this is it. This is it. This is the end. And I remember thinking that in 2011, and then you fast forward not much at all. And you see what starts to happen, and not much later, women start showing up in my life that are literally just showing up on my doorstep saying like, so I hear that you're somebody I can talk to, and could you help me? Would you be my friend? And some of them I'm like, dude, yeah, I should not talk to you. Some of them, you are related to people who have hurt me. I shouldn't talk to you. Like, I don't even know you. I shouldn't talk to you. And they turn out to be people I am supposed to walk with through the deepest, darkest things of their lives. Some of them are strangers, and I'm like, I am supposed to be your friend, and I don't even know why. And then the next week, like clockwork, their lives fall apart. And they look at me and they're like, I am not going to be like you. I don't want to walk with people through their trauma. I'm like, all right, don't worry about it. You don't have to if you don't want to. And here, years later, they're walking people through trauma. And
well, when you get healed and you have figured out like that it's possible, it almost becomes impossible to not want to share that, right? Because in the middle of it, you're traumatized. You have all these triggers. Your brain is so chaotic. No, you can't really, you can hardly believe that you could get through it, much less believe that you could help others through it. But as, like you said, you just take one step, because it does get overwhelming if you start going from I'm going to help people and you're barely surviving. But if you can just take like that one next step and the one next step, it just, the compound effect, the transition that happens when you just look back, even weeks or months later, is so profound in this work.
It is so amazing. And people always say that hurt people. But what they forget is that that is not the end of the story. And yes, it is true. Hurt people do hurt people. But forgiven people forgive people. And healed people heal people. And loved people love people. And whatever we do and whatever we are, that is what pours out. And that is why it is so important to do our work.
Yes.
Because that is what's gonna pour out into the rest of the world. And we can remain stuck, right?
Yeah, we have a
wherever
choice.
we are. Right? That's our choice. And I could have stayed right there in that shag rug that I was on, sobbing my eyes out, broken, feeling too broken to ever be put back together again. Or my choice was to do the work and to say, okay, God, there's some broken freaking pieces here. And that is fact. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be put back together. I don't want to be like a plate that you just like glue back together, because that never works, right? Like I don't want cracked. I want to be made into something else now. Right? I want some kind of mosaic. I want some new art. And honestly, that's what happened. And this new piece, it's better. And I like it more. I like the new version of me way more than I ever liked the first version anyways.
Well, in the first version, was it really even you?
You know?
Right? I mean, I see pieces of it, right? Like I see what God was doing in the beginning. So I talked about how I liked Africa.
Yeah.
When I was a kid. And so I adopted my son from Liberia, my middle son from Liberia, and I have 2 biological kids. And so I had started working in Uganda years ago. And after my life fell apart, and in 2010, my friend from Uganda starts calling, right? And she's like, hey, we should do something. And I am like, frickin' no, right? Like, there is no freaking way. Like, number one, I don't want to do anything. And number 2, everyone hates me, right? Like, I don't want to do anything. Everyone hates me. I don't have any friends. And like, no, I am not interested. And yet she keeps calling, right? So everyone is turned against me except for my Ugandan friends, which is so bizarre in and of itself and such a God thing, right? Uganda is an incredibly patriarchal country. And yet my Ugandan friends are the ones that are like, you will never lose Uganda. Uganda is because of you. And which is just an absurd thing to say, but they're
Well,
so
you've
precious.
had a huge impact in Uganda for sure. So I can understand why they would say that.
They're just super precious. But in the meantime, I had gone back to reading at this point. And I had read this book called Half the Sky. And it's about the oppression of women worldwide. And I had read about these women's cooperatives and about putting 30 women in a group and how much women sharing their stories meant. And when you put women together, everything changes. And of course, right, like that completely touches me. Like, we can all guess why that touches me. And I recognize that we are wounded in relationship and we heal in relationship, right?
Have you been watching my stuff? I'm like, literally, you're saying so many of the same words, and I just love it because that makes me feel like, wow, this is what people need to hear, because that is one of my biggest platforms, is that your trauma happens in relationship and it has to be healed there. And community and telling your story. Like, that's the whole reason of the podcast, right? Is getting that out from just being solely hidden and experienced by you into a place where others can demonstrate this compassion that you can't even have for yourself. And I love that there's this book on it that you're sharing with us, because I encourage everybody that I work with, like, you have to have a community of women if you're a woman, and even finding someone who's shared experiences because of that understanding that they can offer you. So keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just am like, we are on tracking in the same way on this path to healing, and it's really cool.
Completely tracking. So Anne calls and she tells me this. I'm still like, no, right? So I'm doing my own healing work, but Anne in Uganda is like, we should do this. And I'm like, I'm reading this book, but I'm still like, no, I don't want to start anything.
It's really lovely in the book, and it's so beautiful how it works, but
also fear, because I'm afraid of community, right? This is so early in my healing journey. Community had hurt me. But she keeps saying it over and over again. And so finally, I've read it in this book, and she says, but I want to start these women's cooperatives. And I'm like, okay, so I don't want to start a nonprofit, but I do think you should do this, right? Like, this isn't a good idea for me, but it is a good idea for you, Anne, in Uganda. And she says, okay, well, I want to start this for single moms in Uganda. And a single mom in Uganda is a woman who's never been married. And so women who get pregnant out of wedlock in Uganda are like really shunned, right? They are kicked out of their communities and they're treated really poorly. And she wants to get 30 of them together, and she wants to buy them cows. So they have this like asset. So precious. So I tell her I don't want to start a nonprofit, but I do want to send her all the money I have in my bank account. Right. So
that sounds like the Brandi I know for sure.
So I've been a single mom for a year. I am poor as crap, but I tell her I have $1,000 in my bank account, and I'll send her all my money, but not start a nonprofit. So we end up being able to send her enough for 7 cows. And she calls the next week and she says, she posts on Facebook, I have cow delivery day in Angora-Talk Village, and all the moms, and they're like, they're all excited. And then she says, okay, we need 3 more cows. I'm like, Anne, I wasn't lying. I actually sent you all my money. Like, I literally have $0. Like, what are you doing? She was like, I know, you should raise it like you used to. Like, frickin' Anne. Like, I told you, people hate me. Like, what are you doing to me? She's like, the women of Angoratuck need you. I'm like, seriously. And so, of course, you can't say no to Anne. Like, wait till you meet her one day. But I post on Facebook, pretty sure that I'm going to wake up the next morning with just, more confirmation of all of the lies that have been spoken to me and over me and everything. But I post anyways because I'm obedient still, if nothing else. I might be a little rebellious, but I'm still obedient. And instead, I wake up the next morning and 5 people want to buy cows.
Oh, how cool is that God honored your vulnerability, your willingness to face these fears, and gifted you something so precious that it was precious for these women, but also so healing, I would think, for you.
So healing. Just absurd. And I mean, it's still absurd. It was a $600 ask, which is a lot for an overnight ask. It'd still be a lot for an overnight ask. And so I called Anne and I was like, do you want to try to get a second group of 30 women together in Uganda? And she said, yeah, let's just keep going until Jesus says stop.
Oh, I love it.
So that was the beginning of what is now a nonprofit. Because I said I was not going to start a nonprofit. And so I accidentally started a nonprofit.
And don't ever say never, because most of the time God's like, that's exactly where we need to go then. That's where you need some healing.
Yep. So now it's called Heal and Thrive Global. And we said we would just keep going until God and the women of Uganda said stop. And now we have 99 women's cooperatives and 3,000 moms in Uganda. So, yeah.
That is so amazing how
you just never know where healing's going to take you. Yeah. No. And we just, that day that I laid on my face on the ground, thinking I was too broken to ever be put back together again. And I was understanding suffering at a whole new level. What I didn't realize is that I was understanding suffering so that I could heal and then lead in healing, so that I could understand healing at a new level, right?
Yeah, that's so good, because it's hard to walk with people when you don't believe it, right? Like if you had never gone down the road and struggled with like finding yourself and what is God doing in this, and then how do you really walk with someone in those dark places? It's not, you could maybe do it, but it's, I think, not as impactful as when you can just share your testimony that like, I did this and here's how we can partner together. And I have a light that I can shine in the darkness and I can hold your hand and we can walk out of this together. Brandi, thank you so much for walking us through your healing journey. And I'd love for you to share about how, looking back, how has it prepared you in the ministry that you have in Uganda and here within the United States through your nonprofit?
Oh yeah, I would actually say I tease a lot of times that my healing journey is a lot like the residency that doctors go through. That healing and the years and the thousands of dollars in therapy, that is the most important training that I've ever done for the work that I do.
So good. That's such a good way to look at it.
Right? That it was like my intensive residency training. Because if you want to work with those who have suffered, then suffering and healing is the best preparation you can do. That honestly, I don't trust anybody who hasn't suffered and done healing work.
That's a good point. Because you're probably living in perfectionism, judgment, denial, like all the things that I did for like 37 years. And you definitely did not want me giving you emotional healing advice. I can tell you that.
Yes, please. I would like to go back to everyone who I ever led a small group with, everyone who I spoke to for so many years before I did therapy. Because until you've suffered and gone through healing work, I mean, it just honestly that like this is the most important work I've ever done and continue to do. Right. Because it is not a point of arrival. It is a continuous work that I am continually going back to healing. I am eternally grateful that some of my closest friends are therapists, that all of my closest friends are in therapy, and that we are continually using all of our modalities on one another. I actually am currently in a season where some crap has hit the fan in my family and in my life. And because all of my friends are in therapy, the immediate recommendations, everybody's like, okay, what tools are you using? My friends are like, okay, are you doing tapping? Are you doing your breath work? Are you know how trauma resides in your body? So what are you doing? Are you going on runs because you know that's the tool that you use? And so I am so grateful because all of the tools that I used initially, I continue to use in my life because this world is going to wound you. I have people call me all the time and they're like, do you think I need therapy? And I just cut them off. Yes.
Right. I don't even need to know your story. Just, yes, you do. And we need more of that. That's, even this podcast, like the hope is like, let's destigmatize mental health. Let's start teaching people how to use good, healthy coping skills, like all of the things you listed there. Because where do you learn that? You don't, unless you intentionally surrounded yourself or had this opportunity to do, therapy, which isn't available to everybody, unfortunately.
Right. And so I think it teaches me how to be a better leader. I think no matter what your job is, I mean, I happen to work with war-affected people. And so it is absolutely necessary for me. But I think it's necessary if you are a waitress. I think it's necessary if you work at Verizon. I think it's necessary if you are a nurse or a doctor. I think it's necessary if you are a teacher, because if you live in this world, you are surrounded by people who are affected by trauma. But I for sure have seen it in my work. I remember just a few years in to my work, getting to speak at a conference in Uganda. And, so often I feel unqualified, right? Like I haven't lost my entire family to a beheading from a war criminal, right? Like that isn't my story, is not the same as my precious mamas in Uganda. But I do know what it's like to feel so broken that you'll never be put back together again. And so I shared my story with our moms, and I use the word our moms because we are like family. And so I call them mine and they call me theirs. I just want to clear that up, that it's not a possessive thing. It is a familial thing. So I was sharing with our beloved ones, and I shared my story of pain and of brokenness and of healing. And afterwards, one of our leaders was asking one of the moms who had been deeply affected by war what she thought of me and of our training that day. And the mom turned to our leader and she said, you know what? She said, we can listen to Brandi because she knows suffering. She knows healing. And it was in that moment that for me, what I thought is I would do all of this again. And for me, it's been 13 years now since that moment on the shag carpet where I felt like I was too broken to ever be put back together again. And that journey is going to look different for every single person. And if you are someone who is listening today and you are in that shag carpet moment and you still feel so broken that you don't think you're ever going to be put back together again, I want you to feel all the permission in the world to feel your brokenness. And you get to be right where you are. And we want you to feel validated in all of your pain, and yet have just a spark of hope that there might be a chance that one day healing is possible for you. Because other people who have felt broken have also experienced healing. And that's the only thing we want you to know. We want to lay down right down there in that carpet with you and hold you and just whisper that healing too is a thing. That yes, brokenness is real, but so is healing. And that, I think that's what our message is, right? Like in Uganda, our mantra is just that we want to meet people where they are. And our mantra is that you are loved and you are worth loving right where you are, that no matter where you've been, that is what is truer than true. No matter what you've done, no matter what's been done to you, you are loved and you are worth loving. Aminai ijo busa kanita aminai ijo is what it is in Ataso.
So beautiful. Brandi, what a great way to kind of wrap up this podcast is just letting people know that they are worthy of love. And you may not be feeling that way. I know what it feels like to not love yourself, not feel like others should love you. And those are lies that will keep you in a very stuck place. And we want you to know that you are worthy of love. And hopefully you will find people, get involved in this community, reach out to me. I'm here to encourage you. If you need some encouragement, a conversation, resources, I want to help you get connected wherever you're at on whatever journey you're on. And you can do that through my website. I also want Brandi to just tell us a little bit about, we as a podcast community are committed to your ministry and the mission that you have here through Heal and Thrive Global. And we're committed to sponsoring a literacy center. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is? And I will tell our listeners what I'm committed to and what I'm looking for them to come alongside me so that we can make this possible.
Yes, I'm so excited about this. Okay, if you want to be a part of telling moms in Uganda that they are loved and worth loving, kind of what we talked about before is that we are wounded in community and we heal in community. And so we put our moms in community where they get to learn. They get to learn reading, writing, basic math, sanitation, hygiene, nutrition, agriculture, and business at this community center literacy center. And so your community center is going to be a brand new literacy center in Agiri Giroy. Okay. And so there is this mama, Marion, and she is this spitfire leader where she is just gathering as many mamas as she can. And I get to go June 7th. I am leading for Uganda, and I get to announce to Marion that she has permission to open another literacy center, and she is going to pack this full with mamas in Agiri Giroy.
So amazing.
And, oh my gosh, she will put as many moms as she can freaking fit in this building because that's who she is and how she likes to gather women for healing. And she has been through so much, and yet she just turns it right around because she wants to see healing for the moms in her community. And so the sum total is $625 a month, and we can put as many as 180 women for that amount, which is just crazy. That's like, I think $5 a mom, which is absurd. Right? And they get to learn all of that. They will literally change their entire lives. A lot of these moms were told that it wasn't worth educating a girl. So they never got to learn to read. They never got to learn to literally write their own names. And they never got to learn to do math. So they're getting cheated at the market. And now that they learn math, they don't get cheated at the market. They're learning to change their entire homes by learning about hygiene. And now their kids aren't getting diarrhea because they're changing the hygiene at their homes. They're working together to improve their homes. They're working on new businesses together. Like, it changes literally everything about their entire families. And we'll create a Facebook community for everyone who signs up. You can sign up as low as $25 a month. And we'll put a link, and you can find that on Meg's podcast page. And we'll create a Facebook page for everyone who signs up, and you'll get monthly updates, quotes, emails, pictures, everything just about your community of moms.
I love that. And so what I want my community to know is that we are committed to sponsoring and having all the money for an entire year. And so we're going to do something really unique where if you can't do $25 a month, but you could do $25 one time, Brandi and I are going to work this out where we're going to give this I think it's $7,500 or something around that for the entire year. So I'm committed through my business to donate $5,000 of that, and then just raise the $2,500 so that we can do this together as a community. And my hope is that we can continue to grow and develop, because let's face it, guys, $7,500 for a year for these moms is nothing. It's not
right.
Outside of, we could do so much through this opportunity. So we will have some posts. I'm going to make sure Brandi gets us stuff when she's there in Uganda so we can be showing everyone. We're going to go really hard and raise this. And I'm hoping that by the end of September, we have more than enough to do more communities. So that is my goal. And I'm excited to partner and bring you in on it. And I just don't want anybody to miss out, even if you can't do that commitment where it's for a whole year. This is your opportunity to sow a seed as small as you might feel it is, that we're mighty when we are in community and we get to go and support other communities, and everybody's contribution matters. So look out for more information on this opportunity. And I'm just so excited, Brandi. I can't wait to see what this community is able to do and how they're able to take their hard things and sow something. You know, you shared your story of how you sewed in $1,000 and look at it multiply. So this is going to be exciting to see where our collaboration can go in supporting these beautiful moms. And I just love that they're getting their education, but not just like stopping there, that you're helping them start businesses. And that is just something, you're creating legacy, you know, and so they're able to heal their traumas, which helps them be better moms. And then you're giving them the skills so that they can actually take their family from where they are to new levels that they never thought would be possible. You know, when people have turned their back, like you talked about, like people turning your back on you. And now these women are going to be so blessed. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty psyched about this whole thing. So I have been watching you and loving what you're doing and wanting to be involved, and it's now that time. So I'm super excited.
Oh my dear, I am so excited, and I can't wait for you to come to Uganda with me and for you to meet Marian. And on my last trip, I took Marian in the pool for the first time, and she was just so stinking cute. She said, "I am fearing Brandi. I cannot do this unless you come in the pool with me." And we got in the pool in our dresses completely for the first time. It was just the cutest thing in the whole world. You are going to love her and the Agiri Giroi moms. They're just precious beyond measure, and I think your entire community is going to fall in love with all of them. It is such a fun way to connect our healing with other moms who are healing. Oh, I love all of it.
It's a cycle. Instead of the trauma cycle, abuse cycle, we are seeding healing cycles in our lives, our families.
Amen.
Well, Brandi, thank you for taking time. I know that you have a lot going on with your life and your ministry and everything that you are doing to make a difference in this world. And it is such an honor to have this time with you and just learn from you and be encouraged and inspired. I know our listeners just are going to be so blessed by what you've shared. And I hope that you have an awesome day. Thank you for spending this time with me. And I look forward to hearing from you guys in our community as we go together and sponsor this ministry. And have a great day and continue on your journey wherever you're at. Just remember, just take one step in the right direction, doing something different, and you will find yourself in a totally different place in just a matter of time. This podcast is intended only for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. The purpose of this podcast is not to replace the counsel of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. If you or someone you know is struggling or in crisis, help is available. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. New podcasts every Friday. Listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. If you're ready to start your own transformation journey, visit meganbabcock.com.